During the 700s, a powerful new family took control of one of history's most impressive empires. The Abbasid dynasty ruled the Islamic world for 500 years. Under their leadership, Muslim armies dominated battlefields, magnificent cities rose from the desert, scholars made incredible discoveries, and inventors created amazing new technologies. This period became known as the Golden Age of Islam. Let's explore how the Abbasids built their empire and changed the world. Our story begins in 632 when the Prophet Muhammad died in the Arabian city of Medina. His followers, united by the new faith of Islam, quickly spread across Arabia under Abu Bakr, the first caliph or religious leader. Then something extraordinary happened. These Muslim armies challenged the two greatest powers of their time, the Eastern Roman Empire and the Persian Sassanid Empire. Both superpowers had weakened themselves through years of warfare. The Muslim forces won battle after battle in a series of stunning victories. By 651, they had conquered most of the Persian lands and taken over 2/3 of the Eastern Roman territories. But success brought new problems. In 656, the third Caliph Uthman was murdered. This sparked the first civil war among Muslims. Ali, who was both the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law, had popular support. However, he faced opposition from Muawiyah, the governor of Syria and Uthman's relative. After 5 years of bloody fighting, Ali was killed in the city of Kufa. Muawiyah won and started the Umayyad dynasty. Under their rule, the Islamic empire grew even larger, becoming one of the biggest empires ever seen. More conflicts followed. Hussein, Ali's son and the Prophet's grandson, challenged the new Umayyad ruler Yazid. Hussein and his supporters were defeated and killed at the Battle of Karbala. Those who supported Ali's family later became known as Shiites, and they still remember Hussein's death every year during the Day of Ashura. The Umayyad empire kept expanding, but serious problems were growing inside. Most of what we know about the Umayyads comes from their enemies' writings, so we must be careful about believing everything. However, it seems clear that the small group of Arab Muslims who ruled this vast empire were becoming unpopular with their subjects. Non-Muslims, including Christians, Jews, and were treated as second-class citizens and forced to pay extra taxes. Even people who converted to Islam called Mawali often faced discrimination. Years of unhappiness were about to explode. The Umayyads flew white banners as their symbol of power, but in 747, new black banners appeared to challenge them. These belonged to the Abbasids, an Arab family descended from Al-Abbas, the Prophet Muhammad's uncle. The Abbasids believed their family connection to the Prophet gave them the right to rule. They claimed the Umayyads were corrupt and hated by the people. The Abbasids promised to bring back true Islamic values, proper religious teaching, and moral leadership. They sent messengers throughout the empire to spread their message. In 747, while the empire was torn apart by rebellion and civil war, the Abbasids saw their chance. In the eastern region of Khorasan, a general named Abu Muslim started a revolt. He was probably a Persian convert to Islam, and he adopted the black banner as his symbol. This frontier area, covering parts of modern Iran, Turkmenistan, and Afghanistan, was perfect for rebellion. Arabs and non-Arab converts lived together, married each other, and fought side by side to defend the borders. Many saw the Umayyads as distant, unpopular rulers. For decades, Abbasid agents and missionaries had been working to turn people against the Umayyads. They had planted the seeds of revolution. When Abu Muslim began his revolt, he quickly attracted followers: Arabs, Persians, and Central Asians, many of them experienced warriors. Abu Muslim proved to be a brilliant military commander. He won victory after victory against Umayyad forces and captured Kufa, the capital of Iraq, in 749. The Abbasids took control of this revolution. In the following year, their army faced the Umayyad Caliph Marwan II at the Zab River. Most of our information about this crucial battle comes from Abbasid sources. Caliph Marwan seems to have been brave but reckless, launching a direct cavalry attack against the Abbasid battle line. According to Abbasid historians, their troops, inspired by recent victories, held firm. Their spear formations stopped the cavalry charge, turning the attack into a disaster. The Umayyad army's spirit was broken and they fled the battlefield. Marwan escaped but was later hunted down and killed in Egypt. Other Umayyad family members were tracked down and eliminated. Even their graves were destroyed. Only one family member, Abd al-Rahman, managed to escape to Spain. A few years later, Abd al-Rahman established the Emirate of Cordoba, creating a second Umayyad dynasty that would thrive in Spain for centuries. Meanwhile, Abu al-Abbas al-Safa became the first Abbasid Caliph, though it took more than 10 years for the Abbasids to fully secure their power. Al-Safa moved the caliph's residence from Haran to Kufa, closer to the Abbasid power base in Persia. In 751, he sent an army to stop the Chinese Tem's dynasty from expanding westward. This campaign ended with a bloody victory at the Battle of Talas, but it also marked the furthest point of the Caliphate's eastern expansion. Many people who had helped overthrow the Umayyads wanted to end hereditary rule and return to choosing caliphs from among qualified leaders. They were disappointed. In 754, al-Safa died and was replaced by his brother Al. The Abbasids had become the new ruling family, and al-Mansur would become one of their greatest leaders. However, his reign started badly with the execution of Abu Muslim, the brilliant and popular general who was now seen as a dangerous rival. Al-Mansur also faced rebellion from the Alids, a powerful clan descended from the prophets. They resented the Abbasids' growing power and claimed they should rule instead. Al-Mansur crushed the last major Alid revolt in 762, bringing in an era of stability, prosperity, and peace. That same year, he ordered the construction of a new capital city on the banks of the Tigris River, officially called Madinat as-Salam, meaning City of Peace. It would become his greatest achievement. The world would know this city as Baghdad. During the reign of al-Mansur's grandson Harun al-Rashid, the Caliphate reached its golden age with Baghdad at its center. Many legends surround Caliph Harun al-Rashid, whose name means the rightly guided. He appears as a central character in the famous collection of Arabic stories, 1001 Nights. According to these stories, al-Rashid was a devout, wise, and kind ruler who prayed 100 times each day and gave away 1,000 silver coins to charity every morning. Legend says he disguised himself as a beggar to walk the streets of Baghdad and see how ordinary people lived. He was described as an excellent horseman, a supporter of the arts, and a skilled chess player. His court was a place where people could openly discuss religion and philosophy. Even women sometimes joined these debates. In the medieval world, few women held high positions in their own right, but as mothers, wives, and companions, they could have great influence. Al-Khazuran, once a slave girl from Yemen, rose from being a companion to becoming a caliph's wife. She wielded significant power during the reigns of her husband Caliph al-Mahdi and her son Caliph al-Rashid. Famous for her intelligence and learning, she participated in discussions about policy and military strategy, met with foreign ambassadors, and intervened in matters of justice. She spent much of her enormous wealth on public projects and charity. Many people compared her to a Corella or even called her the real caliph. The success of al-Rashid's reign was built on efficient government and administration. Much of their system was based on their predecessors, and they extensively used Persian and Central Asian administrators. Particularly important was the Barmakid family. The Barmakids were descended from high priests of a Buddhist temple near Balkh in modern Afghanistan. As early Abbasid allies, they played a crucial role in government, helping to create an age of Islamic leadership that combined elements of Persian culture. They served the Abbasids faithfully for 3 generations, but court politics could be dangerous and unpredictable. In 803, al-Rashid decided the Barmakids had become too powerful. The family experienced a sudden and dramatic fall from grace, with many members imprisoned or executed. Their downfall ended Barmakid control of the position of vizier, a role that had recently emerged at court as the caliph's senior advisor and chief minister. This was a position of enormous importance. Some viziers would later become so powerful they overshadowed the caliph himself. The fame of al-Rashid's court spread throughout the known world. Charlemagne, king of the Franks, Holy Roman Emperor, and the most powerful ruler in Europe, sent several diplomatic missions to Baghdad. In return, al-Rashid sent him amazing gifts, including perfume, ivory chess sets, a wonderful water clock, and even an elephant named Abbasid. The elephant lived for several years at Charlemagne's court in Aachen. This exchange between the Islamic and Christian worlds shows how the Abbasid Caliphate had become a center of power, culture, and learning that commanded respect across continents. The golden age they created would influence science, philosophy, art, and literature for centuries to come. Life in the Islamic Empire was incredibly diverse, especially in Baghdad. The rulers were so welcoming that they even celebrated Persian festivals like Nowruz, the Persian spring celebration. This acceptance of different cultures helped make the empire an amazing place for learning, art, healing, and discovery. The most famous center of knowledge was an incredible library called the House of Wisdom. Though we don't know much about how it worked today, throughout the empire, smart people worked hard to translate important books from Greek, Persian, and Sanskrit into Arabic. Thanks to their hard work, many valuable writings that might have disappeared forever were saved. This included works by famous thinkers like Aristotle and Galen. These scholars also made their own groundbreaking discoveries that European countries would later desperately want to learn about. Baghdad's thinkers were the best in the world at many subjects. Al-Kindi earned the nickname the Arab philosopher because he was brilliant at so many things. He wrote about thinking, the mind, stars, and much more. Al-Khwarizmi was so good at math that people called him the father of algebra. When Europeans tried to say his name, they said algorithmus, which is where we get our word algorithm today. A Christian scholar named Hunayn ibn Ishaq became known as the master translator because he was so skilled at turning ancient texts into Arabic. Art and crafts also grew beautifully during this time. In the 800s, they started making shiny pottery that opened up new ways to create beautiful things. Archaeologists have found colorful pieces decorated with animals and fancy Arabic writing all across the old empire. The empire also benefited greatly from sitting right in the middle of the Silk Road, the ancient network of trading paths that connected Europe and Asia. Expensive goods traveled along these routes, including silk, spices, ivory, precious stones, and even prize horses. To help this trade grow, the rulers built new roads and set up rest stops, hospitals, and water sources for travelers. New ideas and inventions also moved along these trade routes. The Chinese art of making paper had reached the Muslim world earlier, but it really took off under Abbasid rule. Paper was much cheaper than animal skins or papyrus, so having lots of it completely changed how governments worked and how books were made. This helped medieval Islamic society become one of the most book-loving cultures in all of history. Back in the 600s, Arab armies had pushed the Eastern Roman Empire back to the Taurus Mountains. Since then, these two powers had been fighting almost constantly, with both sides regularly attacking each other across the Syrian border. The Arabs had even tried to capture Constantinople twice, but couldn't take the great city. In 782, Al-Rashid personally led an army all the way to the shores of the Bosphorus. By 804, the Eastern Roman Empire was paying money every year to avoid being attacked. When Emperor Nikephoros stopped these payments, an Arab army crossed the mountains and surprised his forces at The Romans lost badly, and the emperor barely escaped alive. The cycle of attacks continued for years, with Al-Rashid even moving his capital to Raqqa to be closer to the fighting. But focusing so much on his western enemy may have made him miss growing problems in the east. In 809, word came of a rebellion in Khorasan. While traveling east to deal with this uprising, Caliph Harun al-Rashid got sick and died. His 22 years of rule would be remembered as the golden time of the Abbasid Empire, a period of wealth, peace, smart thinking, and cultural success. However, Al-Rashid's own plans to ensure a smooth transition of power were about to go terribly wrong and throw the empire back into civil war. The empire had done wonderfully under Caliph Harun al-Rashid's leadership. To keep the success going, he set up his succession in a way he thought would bring stability and peace. His son Muhammad was supposed to be his replacement, but following a common practice from earlier times, he also named another son, Abdullah, as Muhammad's successor. This turned out to be a recipe for disaster. In 809, in Baghdad, Muhammad took over from his father as caliph, calling himself Al-Amin, meaning the trustworthy. His half-brother Abdullah became governor of Khorasan and took the title Al-Men, meaning the trusted one. Competing groups quickly formed around both brothers. In Baghdad, Al-Amin's advisors pushed him to remove his brother from the line of succession. Just 1 year into his rule, he threw out his father's arrangement. Al-Men was furious, and brotherly distrust exploded into civil war. Al-Amin's forces from Khorasan won a huge victory against a much bigger army at Ray, and then marched to surround Baghdad in 8. The city fell. Caliph Al-Amin was caught trying to escape and was killed. At first, Al-Men ruled the empire from his old headquarters at Merv. Trying to gain more support after the civil war, he created a new partnership with the Alids. This powerful family came from Ali, the fourth caliph and son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad. They would later become leaders of Shia Islam, the branch that believes true religious authority belongs to Ali's descendants. Instead of the traditional Abbasid black clothing, Al-Men's court started wearing green, a color connected to the Alids. Al-Men even married 2 of his daughters to Alidmen and made an Alid religious leader his chosen successor. But these policies made people angry back in Iraq and led to major uprisings in Baghdad. After 6 years, the caliph moved the capital back there to restore order and gave up his Alid partnership. Al-Men is also remembered for trying to force a new religious teaching on the empire. He first brought respected scholars to Baghdad to discuss religious questions, like the actions of the Prophet's companions, religious stories, and the nature of the Quran. When he declared that the Quran was created by God at some point in time, rather than existing forever alongside God, he faced fierce opposition. 18 years of religious persecution followed, known as the Minna or Inquisition, during which disagreeing scholars were imprisoned or even executed. In 833, Al-Mun was replaced by his brother, who called himself Al-Mun. He was far more interested in warfare than religious debates. The armies of the Abbasid Empire were famous in battle and included both Arab and non-Arab soldiers. The Khorasanese troops from the border province of Khorasan were the soldiers who had helped bring the Abbasids to power during the Third Islamic Civil War. Drawing on Persian and steppe warrior traditions, their ranks included both armored foot soldiers and heavy armored cavalry. Similar to European knights, the descendants of Khorasanis who settled near Baghdad were called sons of the people of Khorasan. Famous as elite and versatile foot soldiers, they formed the loyal heart of the caliph's army. Other important groups included the Daylamis, expert light fighters from the mountains of northern Persia, African troops, including military slaves and Muslim converts from Ethiopia, fought as heavy infantry with shields, swords, and spears. The great Caliph Harun al-Rashid was known to have an elite bodyguard of 40 African soldiers. Abbasid armies were especially good at attacking cities and expertly used catapults, stone throwers, and battering rams. They even had special troops armed with naphtha or oil-based fire weapons. No pictures from that time survive, but they probably looked similar to this slightly later Byzantine illustration. The 800s, however, would see changes so dramatic that some historians call it a military revolution. During the civil war between Rashid's sons, Al-Mu'tasim had started expanding his personal army by buying Turkish slave soldiers. His favorite supplier was the Samanid family, governors of These slave soldiers were taken from their villages as boys aboard in slave markets, then sent for intense military training along with Islamic education. They became incredible horsemen and amazingly skilled mounted archers. Al-Jahiz, a writer from that time, described them with wonder. The Turks are as good as anyone with spears, but even better if 1,000 of their horsemen are in trouble. They can all shoot their arrows at once and kill 1,000 enemy horsemen. No group of men can survive such an attack. Historians argue about the exact timing, but sometime in the 8th, these Turkish slave soldiers, called Mamluks, had become an elite unit within the Abbasid army. They were personally loyal to the Caliph and could be used to intimidate his political enemies. Turkish officers, despite starting as outsiders who didn't speak Arabic or understand local customs, began to have huge influence at the Caliph's court. This upset the old nobility, many of whom also stopped getting their traditional military payments. The unhappiness even caused some soldiers to riot in Baghdad's streets. To reduce tension, Al-Mu'tasim built a new city for the Turkish military elite called Sa. This is where he housed the Turks and rewarded their commanders with land. In the year 848, construction started on what would become the world's biggest mosque, complete with its iconic spiral tower that still stands today. But this grand building project couldn't hide the growing problems within the empire. Al-Mu'tasim had made a dangerous choice by depending on foreign slave warriors to keep his throne secure. This decision broke apart military traditions that had lasted for hundreds of years and planted the seeds for future chaos. Just 2 years after the mosque construction began, the Caliph took his powerful new army to fight their ancient enemy, the Eastern Roman Empire, also called the Byzantine Empire. The military campaign was a huge success. They captured and destroyed the important city of Amur. An Arab poet named Abu Tamam celebrated this victory, writing that their hopes had returned overflowing with sweet milk like honey. But even such impressive victories could uncalm the growing tension between the Turkish officers and the Arab nobles who had served the Abbasid family for generations. Some nobles grew so frustrated that they secretly planned to remove Al-Mu'tasim from power and kick out all the Turkish soldiers. Their plot was discovered, and the conspirators were put to death. When Al-Mu'tasim died, his oldest son, Al-Wathiq, took over. After Al-Wathiq's sudden death, another son named Al-Mutawakkil became the new ruler. With full support from the Turkish generals, the Turkish leaders thought they could easily control the new caliph like a puppet. They were wrong. Al-Mutawakkil decided it was time to take back real control of his empire. He ordered the murder of several Turkish commanders and tried to balance their power by using Arab and Armenian soldiers instead. The Turks fought back hard. In 861, the caliph's own bodyguards killed him. What happened next was a period of complete chaos that historians call the Decade of Anarchy. 4 different caliphs tried to rule during this time, but each one was just a puppet controlled by the Turkish military leaders. One by one, they were all violently removed from power. Peace only returned when Caliph Al-Mu'tamid took the throne in 870. But the years of chaos had permanently damaged the caliph's authority and respect. Even before the Abbasid family came to power, their massive empire had struggled to control all its different regions. The caliph's authority west of Egypt had always been more of an idea than reality. Now, major rebellions broke out everywhere as local governors and military commanders decided to rule their own territories. Egypt, with its rich farmland and wealth, was one of the first areas to be lost. A rebel Turkish commander took control and started his own ruling family called the Tulunid dynasty. In southern Iraq, a massive revolt began among agricultural slaves who had been brought from Eastern Africa. These workers, known as the Zanj, fought for 14 years. Their uprising destroyed much of the region and severely cut off tax money and food supplies to Baghdad. In Afghanistan, a metal worker named Yaqub al-Safar made an incredible rise to power. He founded his own dynasty called the Saffarids and conquered large parts of eastern Persia. His advance was only stopped at the Battle of Deir al-Akwil in 876. During these troubled times, the Abbasid caliphs found it nearly impossible to maintain their authority. But there were some bright spots. Caliph al-Mu'taid had managed to bring back some Abbasid strength through smart military campaigns and clever diplomacy. His most successful move was marrying the daughter of the Tulunid ruler who controlled Egypt. His bride was the famous Kader al-Nada, whose name means dewdrop. One scholar described her as one of the most intelligent and royal women who ever lived. When al-Mu'taid told his new wife, "You've done well for yourself by marrying the caliph. What more could you ask God for?" She cleverly replied, "You've done well for yourself too. This marriage makes my father your subject. What more could you ask God for?" Her bold response showed both her strong character and the delicate new balance of power between the Abbasid caliphs and their more powerful subjects. During the rule of Al-Mu'tadid's son Al-Muqtafi, Egypt was fully brought back under Abbasid control, but in other places the news was terrible. Abbasid authority completely collapsed in Arabia. One Shiite group called the Qarmatians even began attacking religious pilgrims traveling to the holy city of Mecca. In 930, they committed an unthinkable act by stealing the black stone from the Kaaba. This sacred object was considered the holiest of holy relics, and its theft was a devastating blow to Abbasid prestige and religious authority. In Central Asia, the Persian Sassanids carved out their own empire and declared independence from the Kaaba. This period is known as the Persian Intermezzo, when native Persian ruling families controlled Persia once again, after centuries of Arab rule. More and more, people said the Abbasid Caliph could reign but not actually rule. He had become just a symbol without real power, often controlled by his chief minister, called a vizier. By the 930s, the Caliph had lost control of both the government administration and the army. Military command was given to a new official called the Emir al-Umara, which means commander of the commanders. The final humiliation came in 945. The Abbasids were Shiite warlords from the Dayl Mountains in northwestern Persia. They first succeeded in Fars province, then went on to seize control of Persia and Iraq. When they marched triumphantly into Baghdad, it was a deep embarrassment for the Sunni Abbasids. Yet the Abbasids kept their title of Caliph, even though they were now just figureheads under Abbasid command. They could only watch as spectators during these turbulent times. 20 years later, another Shiite dynasty called the Fatimids swept along the North African coast, conquered Egypt, and founded Cairo as the capital of their own competing caliphate. Some historians call this period the Shiite century, because Shiite dynasties ruled to different caliphates and dominated much of the Muslim world. But this Shiite dominance wouldn't last long. A dangerous new Sunni power was about to explode out of Central Asia. The Seljuk Turks. The Seljuk Turks were nomadic herders from the Central Asian steppes. They were fierce warriors who became strong supporters of Sunni Islam. At the end of the 10th century, possibly because of climate changes, they swept south into the region of Khorasan. The Ghaznavid Empire, which had replaced the Sassanids, was the first to fall to their advance. The Seljuk Turks seemed They surged westward across the Persian plateau, captured Baghdad and overthrew the Abbasids. They crushed the Byzantine army at the Battle of Manzikert and forged what became known as the Great Seljuk Empire. Their triumph was challenged by the arrival of European crusaders, who captured Jerusalem in 1099 and established a series of crusader states in the Holy Land. One mysterious Shia sect struck back at the Seljuks with deadly precision. In 1092, Nizam al-Mulk, the chief minister of the Seljuk Empire, was killed by the order of assassins. The hit squad disguised themselves as Sufi mystics to get close to their target. The assassins, known in Arabic as the were a new Ismaili military order based in the mountains of northwestern Persia. Since they faced powerful enemies but had no regular army of their own, they turned to secret operations and targeted killings to achieve their goals. Many wild stories are told about the assassins, but the organization was real and feared throughout the region. They were responsible for dozens of political murders over the next 2 centuries. Under Seljuk rule, Abbasid caliphs continued to serve as spiritual leaders and ceremonial figures, but they had no real political power. The 12th century saw the great Seljuk Empire fall apart, a familiar story of disputed successions and local governors making their own bids for power. Sensing this weakness, in 1136, Abbasid Caliph al-Muqtafi raised his own army to reassert Abbasid independence for the first time in nearly 2 centuries. He took control of Baghdad and, in 1157, successfully defended it against a Seljuk siege. After generations of foreign control, the Abbasids had emerged once again as an independent power, but this resurgence would soon come crashing down. In the 13th century, a new force from the east tore through the Islamic world, scattering armies and destroying every city that refused to surrender to them. The Mongols had arrived. The first to fall was the Khwarezmian Empire, successor to the Seljuks, which was overrun by the Mongol armies of Chinggis Khan. By 1256, his grandson Hulagu was ready to continue the assault. But first, he turned his attention to the assassins, who were rumored to be plotting his death. The secretive order was scattered and completely destroyed. 2 years later, Hulagu advanced against the Abbasid Caliphate itself. As his armies approached Baghdad, he sent a harsh warning to Caliph al-Mustasim, demanding the city's surrender. Despite the Mongols' terrifying reputation for destroying any city that opposed them, al-Mustasim believed Baghdad's walls could keep out these steppe nomads. He was tragically wrong. After half of Baghdad's garrison was massacred in a disastrous attack, the city surrendered, but Hulagu was in no mood for mercy. A contemporary writer described the horrors that followed. The people of Baghdad were put to the sword and subjected to 40 days of killing, looting, and enslavement. They tortured people to steal their wealth. They killed men, women, and children. A large part of the city, including the Caliph's mosque, was burned, and the city was left in ruins. The dead lay like hills in the streets and markets. The death toll is unknown, but was certainly in the tens of thousands. Reportedly, only Christians were spared, thanks to the intervention of Hulag's Christian wife. Baghdad's libraries were destroyed. Their books and manuscripts representing centuries of Muslim learning and scholarship were thrown into the Tigris River. It was said that the river ran black with ink from all the destroyed texts. Al-Mustasim was forced to watch this terrible destruction of his city. Then, according to several historical sources, he was rolled up in a carpet and trampled to death, as the Mongols believed it was unlucky to spill royal blood directly. The last Caliph of Baghdad was dead. Never again would the Abbasids hold meaningful political power. Al-Mustasim was technically the last Abbasid Caliph. The family line would continue under the Mamluk Sultanate that now ruled Egypt. But his successors in Cairo were merely ceremonial figures, religious leaders with little actual power. The final Caliph, Al-Mutawakkil III, surrendered to the Ottoman Empire in 1517 and was taken as a prisoner to It was a humiliating end for a dynasty that had once ruled one of history's greatest empires. This was the same empire that had dominated the Middle East for centuries, the same empire that had fought and defeated the Byzantines in the West and the Chinese in the East, the same empire that had overseen a great flowering of learning, culture, technology, and trade, the same empire that had reigned over the era remembered as Islam's Golden Age. For centuries to come, Islamic leaders would claim legitimacy by stating they were descended from this one towering dynasty. Their legacy lived on long after their political power had ended, a testament to the incredible impact they had on the world during their golden era of rule.